Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. I'm Spudlow, and in this video I'll be going over painting one of the Warp Lightning Cannon crewmen. This is one that I designed to, or I have the intention of having him ride on top of the barrel of the cannon. This one, just like the Warp Lightning Cannon, has already been partially assembled and primed with the brown fur, the Army Painter primer. The only problem is that he hasn't had the best of attention up until now. So the first thing I need to do is go back over some of the mold lines and then re-prime this guy. So first I go through with a hobby knife and clear off a little bit of the molding edges, make it a little bit less noticeable, especially the back of the tail, the top of the head, and right down the spine, back of the spine. There's a little bit of molding as well on the wrench that he's holding, so on the inside and outside of the large pincing pieces. And I'll just take my hobby knife and gently scrape across those surfaces to try to flatten them out, make that mold line look a little less noticeable. With the mold lines done and the primer put back on, I go ahead and start with some base coating, starting with Scrag Brown for most of the fur areas. After that, I go through with a dry brush of Tallarn Flesh to go over the nose and the hands and the feet, and also the tail, just getting the parts that I want to have a more fleshy look rather than a fur look. This step is a bit of a mistake. If I had thought about things, now is not the time to do this. When I was originally starting the model, I wanted to do the dry brush now because I knew it was gonna mess up a considerable amount of the surrounding areas. But I wasn't thinking far enough ahead. Later on in the video, you'll realize that all of the work that I've done here has been covered over with different washes, and I end up having to come back and highlight these areas anyway. So this step at this point you can pretty much skip, but you see the gist of how I dry brush things. I wanted to dry brush early, so I didn't have to worry about going outside of the areas I wanted to cover. I know I wanted to get the snout and the hands, but I know in the process I'm going to mess up the mask that he's got, the cloth that he has over his face, and other areas of the big wrench that he's holding and things like that. And I wanted to come by afterwards and paint those and not have to worry about it. But in the end, the step is pretty much unnecessary. Now I start base coating his clothing, and an idea that came to me as I was painting it was, since he was actually going to be on top of the Warp Lightning Cannon, I decided to give him a red safety vest, and I end up putting like yellow highlights on this as like the yellow fluorescent tape that a lot of construction workers wear. So I start out putting the upper layer, or the overlayer of his shirt, with Evil Sun's Scarlet. This will stand out enough to be a good thing to grab your eye when you're looking at it, at least I'm hoping in the end. I only paint the overlayer of his clothing, especially at the base where his legs are. I give enough room to put a different color of cloth underneath. That way it really looks like he's wearing a vest over the top of his clothes. With the safety vest done, I go back and hit the rest of his clothing pieces with bleached bone. It's a light color, but I know after the wash it's really going to darken down to what I'm looking for. Some of the trickiest parts of this is getting the overlay of the upper layer of clothing over the next. So you don't want to get it on the vest, but you've got to make sure you get the inside of the crease line, otherwise it's not going to look right. Some of the bristles on my brush start to get away, and I have to cut them free or mash them back down. I really should look into getting some better brushes, but these were the ones that I got for the start of all this, and I'm realizing I need to get some better ones. So if you got suggestions on good brushes that you like to use, let me know. I can give them a try. With the clothing done, I go ahead and paint the handle of his wrench with scorched brown. It's a different enough tint so that it should stand out from his hands as he holds it, even after the wash is put on. Next, I move on to covering the metal parts of the wrench, the upper section and the very butt end of it. I go over with bolt gun metal first to cover everything, then I'm going to come back and do the details afterward. But I want to make sure I get all the nooks and crannies, so I go for the bolt gun first. Most metallic paints are significantly thicker than most of your other colors, so you can water these down significantly. Just don't water them down so much that they spread where they're not supposed to. And since I am going for a more rusted and weathered look with the brown primer underneath, I don't have to worry about getting a really good coat layer, a really thick layer over everything. I can leave it a little bit thin in areas, and if some of the brown shows through, it's going to give it a little bit of a rust effect, so that's okay. I use Hachette copper to do the detail section for the two scissored crimper parts of this wrench that he's using. I did some more black detailing toward the front of the wrench to give it a look of some large washers or a valve section that's used to crimp this thing together. Gives it a little more of a hydraulic look, I suppose. I go ahead and paint the foot plate that he has, the only other metal piece that I forgot about it as I was doing the wrench. Next, I use Dark Angel's green for this little trinket that he has around his waist. The green is such an intense color. Any small brush stroke that strays away makes a very significant error mark. So after this step, I had to go back and touch things up a little bit. But I have to do that over several parts of the model. Just don't let it discourage you. If you make a mistake, hey, it's paint. You can always paint over it. Now I want to try to do the straps that are around his arms and around his wrists and ankles. And I start off with rotting flesh because I want him to have a lighter color, but it just isn't different enough from the bleached bone. So I go ahead and mix some of the rotting flesh with scrag brown to give me a very mediocre color. One in between, so that I can have something that's a little bit different enough from the cloth and different enough from the fur. I didn't want to go with a yellow or a blue or a green. It's just going to look too far out. I wanted it to be still a dirty Skaven color. And with the red and the much lighter bleached bone color already used, as long as the brown, I went with this one. A little lighter version of a leather. Start working on his mouth here, and I want the teeth to stand out, but I don't want to have to brighten them up too much. I still want him to have relatively dirty teeth. So in order to help out, I go ahead and put Chaos Black inside the mouth so I can come back and paint the teeth over the top of that with a bleached bone. It helps to get into the cracks of the teeth by having the paint as thin as you can get it and still cover. That way you just have to tap into his mouth and let it sink in the crevices. Now I come back with the bleached bone and just drag over the top of the teeth and let the pieces that are sticking out grab the paint. A little fixing on his lower lip is necessary since the white decided not to cooperate entirely. I come back with a little more rotting flesh and do some toenails and some fingernails. Getting ready for the wash now, I want to finish off the rest of his base coat. So I take some Flash Gint's yellow and do the stripes down the back of his safety vest. Do the back and the front, 2 stripes, just going vertically. Now I started with the washing. This is Agrex Earthshade, and since I want to give his clothing a dirty effect, I go ahead and paint over all of the light colored clothing, but I don't hit all of his safety vest. I do go over his arms and his legs and all the flesh parts as well. But I don't go over the upper part of the safety vest to give it a little more cleaner look, as if it's the vest that he only wears sometimes. Somehow when you see construction workers, the only part of them that's really clean is that security vest. So I went ahead and went with it. Now I move on to the Brakelin Flesh shade, and this is where afterwards I realized my dry brushing really wasn't very necessary, because I wanted his flesh parts to get a good washing, but I wanted to stand out from his clothing. So I go ahead and do this over his eyes and his mouth and his ears and his hands and his feet and his tail. Basically all of the places that I highlighted earlier on. And after this wash, there really isn't very much left of that original highlight to see. But oh well, live and learn. For you, go ahead and do your washing, then come back and do some highlight afterwards. It'll be a lot easier. Now I go over these little pustules he's got on his tail and on his right arm with Evil Scun Scarlet as a base coat. And since I want his eyes to have a red tone as well, I go ahead and go for Scab Red for his eyes to give it a different tint. Then I come back over these little pustule things with Emperor's Children, a lighter purplish pink. And I hit his nose as well to give those the lighter colored fleshy bits. The only downside is afterwards, looking at his nose, I realize it's far too bright. But I come over with the flesh shade again on the pustules on his nose to try to help those colors blend in a little bit better. It's still not quite enough for his nose, and I come back with a little bit of dry brushing of the Talon flesh. But first, I go over some highlighting for the clothes with some bleach bone and just kind of drag across. Gives it a very gritty effect, gritty and dirty effect, which is perfect for Skaven, so it comes out quite well. Then I go ahead and highlight the brown. This is just coming back over with Scrag Brown for the upper parts of his shoulders and a few parts of the arms that are well exposed to bring out the muscle shape and a little bit of his knees. The fur didn't stand out quite enough for my liking, so I go ahead and come back over that with some more Scorch Brown to darken it up a bit, show some difference. The emblem on his waist is kind of held there by a little metal link, and I'd already painted that with the copper. And I go back over the edges of the emblem with Goblin Green to bring out the shape of the emblem a lot better. All I gotta do now is touch up a couple of areas. I got some lighter color highlight into his eyes and a couple of other small mistake spots. Clear him up and put him on the Warp Lightning Cannon, and he'll be good to go. And there's our final Skaven Warp Lightning Cannon crew member, with his safety vest and everything, riding high on top of the cannon. Hope you shoot straight, you little wanker. If I roll a misfire, I'm going to flick him off the top of that cannon all the way across the room. I don't care how long I spend on you. You hear me? That's right. Shoot straight. This is Budlow, giving you a little video on painting a Warp Lightning Cannon crewman. Till next time, keep painting.